Yeah, I don't know. There's also chaos outside because we're trying to make a beef Wellington.
Oh. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Sounds tough.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Atcast, a podcast for the study of modern visual culture. I'm your vampire cosmonaut, Soup.
And I'm your banished party member from the Heroes Party, Renu.
This week, At stands for Absolute Territory because we'll be sampling the fall 2021 season. But before we get into that, what have you been up to?
I went to Portland, as you know, for a convention.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it was absolutely lovely. I would say out of all of the conventions that I've been to in the United States, it is the one that has had the most helpful staff.
Oh, that's nice.
Yes, they were extremely kind and very eager to help with whatever. They checked in often. They weren't so quote unquote helpful that they were like bothersome or anything. They just it was like the right amount of like, do you need something? Do you want us to like watch your table? If you need supplies, we've got some like emergency like ties and like tools and things like that if you need something for your setup, that kind of thing. So yeah, it was great, and I got to table next to some friends of mine, so that's always fun. And the sales were quite good, I'd say. People were being super safe, social distancing and sanitizing and all that.
It's good.
Yeah, and I think as a result there was never really any moment, at least for my table, where it felt like people were like super packed. There was like a line, there was like clogging or whatever. It was just like a steady flow of customers throughout the convention, which was really nice. So you weren't like, there wasn't a moment where you were super bored, and there wasn't a moment where you were too busy, So yeah, it was, I had a great time. And I got to eat some good food. We went to a Thai place the first night, and then the second night we took one of your ramen recommendations, and that was super good.
Good. I'm glad. I really like that place.
Yeah, I like it too. It was like casual, and there wasn't like a line. There wasn't a wait or anything, so we could just walk in. But the food was really good, Yeah. So, yeah.
Nice. It's a nice little spot. Definitely one of my favorite like just go to ramen places. They like hand make their noodles, and it's nice.
Yeah, you can taste the difference, and the meat was good. The broth was delicious. There was like a little bit of like extra spice that I couldn't really identify, but it was good. It was kind of different from other ramen that I've had.
Yeah. Did you have which one did you have?
I'm trying to remember. I had the miso ramen, but it was one of their like specials or whatever. I don't remember which one it was on the menu. Let's see. I went to Ramen Ryoma, by the way, for people listening. So if you go to Portland, hit them up because they're very good. Because the Thai place that we went to the night before was of course good, but the wait was like so long.
Oh, and, no, yeah.
Yeah, there was like outdoor seating, of course. There was no indoor seating. And you had to bust your own tables and everything. Basically, they would only bring the food out to you, and that was it. But at the ramen place, it was like a normal restaurant, essentially. But, the tables were more spread out. Yeah. Yeah, let me see. What's their menu? Maybe I had the Ryoma ramen? Deluxe Ryoma ramen?
I think I usually got either the killer spicy, which is very delightful.
You would.
Right. Or I would get just anything with like black garlic is always like delicious. I think the miso too, the spicy miso.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm looking at the pictures and I want to go back again.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
So
I honestly, I miss it down here.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's one of those things where whenever you move, you have to like find the new hotness, the new places around you to eat. And I'm happy to report that a lot of the ramen places we've gone to around here have been pretty good. There's like a really decent one very close by, and that's where we've been snacking, getting our ramen fix, and I'm pretty happy with it. Yeah. So that's good. Did you go to any of the other places that I recommended, or just the ramen one?
It was just the ramen one because we didn't. I'm trying to remember. I think on Sunday we didn't have time to go dinner because I had to fly out, like around 5 or something like that. So basically, I packed up at the convention and then left immediately for my flight. And then for lunch, we had to basically get whatever we could that was nearby because we were in the middle of the convention. So
Right, yeah.
But
Cool.
hopefully I'll be able to go back at some point because
Yeah, totally. You have to try the other places.
that
I recommended to you because there's like three really big like spots that I would visit whenever I would go up to Oregon, up to Portland, and it's definitely the Rex that I gave you. So
yeah. If you guys ever go to Portland, hit Soupy up because
yeah,
they have
just
recommendations.
let me know. Let me know.
Yeah.
I'll give you the deets.
Yeah, the big deets.
Give you the lowdowns.
Yeah. So, what are you up to?
It has been quite some time since we've recorded. Like two-ish weeks, two maybe 3 actually. Now that I think about it. Since I have been down to LA and back, I went for a trip for my anniversary, and we went to go see a podcast. We went to go see the Chilluminati podcast, which
oh, I love them.
Oh, really? I didn't know you.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I didn't know you listened to them.
I love them. They're so fun.
I went to go see the Chilluminati podcast live, and that was very delightful. That was a super fun thing.
Yeah.
It was like the perfect sized venue where like, it's not too big, it's not too small, so like you kind of feel like it is an event. But obviously it's not so big that the guys couldn't just like hang around after and like meet the fans and stuff.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
It's actually it's really funny because there's like one like kind of big complaint I have about that podcast, which is that I listen to it a lot in the car and it's not balanced for the car. Really?
Oh, really?
So it's like quiet, right? It's like too quiet, so I have to crank the volume all the way up. And sometimes Google is just way louder, right? Which is not honestly the worst complaint. I think otherwise, like that podcast is definitely one of my favorites. It's definitely like the only podcast I really listen to anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but But that kind of spawned into like a running joke where I would complain about the audio balancing because like sometimes it's not like the problem is that they sometimes it's like too quiet, but then sometimes someone like gets really loud and it's like too loud, so like the balancing is like a little like off. It's not like equalized properly. And I it sucks to like complain about the podcast that I went to go see because I do love it, right? But it became a running joke where I should just offer to edit their podcast for them.
It's just constructive criticism,
Right. I mean, it is funny though because they hung around. I did get to give some of them my business card, which I had a bunch made for events in 2020 to use, and you know what happened there. Nothing happened.
Nothing
basically.
happened. Yes.
Yeah. Nothing was allowed to happen anymore for quite a long time. So these business cards have just been kind of sitting in my closet gathering dust. But
Oh wow.
Yeah, so I did that. I went down to LA. I had a lot of tasty food. LA is such a good place to go if you want to eat food. Like, not to say that there's not good food up here, because there absolutely is, but I think when it comes to just the sheer variety and amount of like really good places, like, yeah, I mean, you're going to LA.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's definitely a gathering hub for diverse food and also good food.
Yeah, yeah. So that was super fun. We got to hang out with a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of friends down there. We stayed a couple nights at a hotel, a couple nights at a friend of mine's place, and yeah, we overall had a very good time. Then we drove back up, and then we had a Halloween party. So
Yeah, you dressed as
yeah,
Majima.
yeah. I dressed as Majima. I went for the ye old Yakuza Zero Majima with
We do
his
love
suit
that.
and bow
Yes,
tie.
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, so that was delightful. My hair was not cooperating that day though.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah,
You had
it's
the
okay.
Majima vibe.
I had the vibes going, and that's
Yeah.
all that matters. All right,
Yeah.
that's more or less what I've been up to.
Yeah.
Other than that, just been working, living, streaming. We
Sounds
have
good.
made it
Mhm.
through a little bit of the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, and
Yeah. The second case.
I honestly, I'm looking as I like the second case, but I am very much looking forward to the first like proper case of the game where they give you an investigation scene and then they give you the case trial scene.
Yeah,
right?
me too. Mm-hmm.
Because normally like case 2 is really where you get into it, but case 2 in Grace Ace Attorney Chronicles is more like a showcase for the other mechanic in the game, which was the great deductions.
The dancing.
The dancing, which was actually like super fun.
It was fun, yeah.
And I liked that they like really kind of leaned into the Sherlock Holmes-y aspect of the game by just having the investigation, and that's it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Yeah, that was fun.
Mhm.
But I'm really looking forward to the case because we haven't even met the prosecutor, like the main prosecutor of the case of the game yet, and I can't wait.
You mean it's not Winston Payne's ancestor for the rest of the game?
Oh my god, that would sure be something. No, he doesn't exist anymore. He got his top knot cut. He's a disgraced man.
Oh, so he doesn't. We're never facing off with him again?
I don't think so.
No.
I think the rest of the cases we do are in Britain.
Oh, I guess that makes sense. But he could fly, or no, sail over. He can't fly in this time era yet.
Anyway, so shall we talk about this season? This season's anime.
Yes.
So as we said last time we did one of these, it's going to be a 0.5 episode, and it's going to be we're going to not focus as much on the stuff that we're definitely going to keep watching, just for the sake of time and repeating ourselves. But that's just the new format. So here we go.
Woo!
First, I don't know how, but I completely forgot that we didn't watch Komi Can't Communicate, but that looks pretty cute. It's a cute sort of like slice of life gag comedy, where the central gag is the main character, or one of the main characters is like the female lead is just woefully socially inadequate and cannot talk to people or make friends, but she's very pretty, right? So
yeah, it's a really,
good.
really well done manga. And
the anime looks really well produced.
The anime
too.
also looks good, at least from like the previews that we've seen. Hopefully that is the case for the rest of the show. But
right,
it's also on Netflix, isn't it?
Yeah, it's on Netflix. That's why we didn't catch it initially,
right?
Because we always forget about the stuff that's on Netflix. But
yeah,
I think both Komi-san and Blue Period are releasing weekly, so we should be able to check that out. And if it catches our attention enough, we might just keep watching it as like a It seems like a nice like wind down piece, honestly. Like last season when we were watching all of the To Your Eternity stuff and all of the like really intense shows we were watching, we would always cool off with like Maid Dragon. So, it's good to have a cool down show.
Yes,
for sure.
We do need a cool down show.
But speaking of, let's talk about Blue Period, which is a manga that we love dearly. We've definitely talked about it on the show before. How did you feel about this?
So, for me, I mean, the manga is basically its own little masterpiece. And
I agree, yes.
It's very much structured to be a manga. You know what I mean? Kind of like how Junji Ito's works are very, very much structured to be manga.
Yeah.
Blue Period is very... the format informs the story, and the story informs the format. So... as an anime, I'm like kind of 50-50 on it. On one hand, I like that it's an anime because we get voice acting, we get music, we get moving visuals and things like that. But also, it doesn't seem like there was a whole lot of budget that was, or either budget or time that was allotted for this anime. And so, to me, it doesn't feel like a very quality anime to watch.
I agree. I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not saying that it's not worth watching. If you don't really read manga and you want to experience Blue Period, definitely experience the anime because it still tells the story well. I would just say that if you want the most quote unquote optimal way of experiencing the story, I would say probably read the manga.
I think the thing to me is that it is very hard to, and there's a very real case to be made here about the way that adaptation works, because like, you know, right now kind of the new hotness to talk about is Netflix's live action Cowboy Bebop, right? All of their promotional material has been basically shot for shot recreations of the anime and shot for shot recreations of the opening, and like that doesn't sell people on the show because you're just showing people why animation is like an objectively superior medium to tell this story, right? If you're not doing anything new or like unique to the medium, it feels a lot blander, right? And I think Blue Period kind of falls in that space where like obviously when you have an anime adaptation, you have the advantage of music, you have the advantage of voice acting, right? All of that stuff. But the thing about Blue Period is that it's such an intensely visual experience. And I wouldn't say that the anime is bad necessarily. It does feel like, I wouldn't even say it feels like bad or not well directed or rushed or anything.
Yeah.
I think it looks fairly average for an anime.
It feels average, yes.
And that has to compare to what I think is like one of maybe the best manga ever drawn, right?
Yes,
like,
yes.
We're talking about different magnitudes of a thing here, where like the merits of the manga just overshadow whatever the anime could be. And, you know, it's kind of a shame because, you know, on one hand, it's like about how adaptation is an imperfect sort of process, and you're always going to have to lose something or make decisions about something that is going to change the way that people experience that piece of media. And Blue Period is so good because it's about somebody learning how to do art. And one of the coolest things that I think the manga does is when you're learning about it through the lens of the main character, you begin to be able to see the composition of the manga itself. So the manga is literally teaching you how to read it, but completely diegetically. And that is just ridiculously cool.
It is mind-blowingly cool, yes, as an artist, but also as a reader. Like they teach get to you learn about at the same pace.
Right, like they teach you about the like perspective shots, right? How to build a perspective shot. And then they have this like wide perspective shot to demonstrate it for you, right?
Yes.
And like it is very clearly drawn by somebody who has very intimate knowledge of the process of like getting into art school and like being in art school and what it means to be a creative person. And it is something that will resonate, I think, with any creator, right? Because it really delves into like what does it mean to make things creatively, and what does it mean to engage with that, and how can we do that? How can we express ourselves in a way that is meaningful and makes sense to others, or like if that is even valuable to begin with, right?
Yeah, I think it so wonderfully breaks the creative process down, not just, you know, painting or drawing but like the creative process in general, right? And I was talking, and one of the points they actually bring up in this series that I've been talking about with my artist friends is the difference between skill and talent, right? And they point this out in the very first episode of this anime, is that artists and creators in general don't necessarily enjoy talking or being referred to as being talented. And that's not to say that we don't like the compliment. It's that it makes it sound as if we were born with this technique, or we were born with this magical way of producing art. And while people are born, of course, and have different experiences that mold their interests, it kind of overwrites the fact that it is a skill that is slowly built up over time.
Totally, yeah.
And so it makes it sound like if you are interested in art and you didn't start when you were like 3 years old, there's no way that you can learn art. Or if that you're just born with an interest in art or something like that, right? And if you don't have that, then you can never be an artist. You can never learn how to draw. And so the series breaks it down in such a way that if you're even mildly interested in art or the creative process in general, it will show you like how you can like gather the building blocks and start moving up from there. It just starts with basically an interest. And so in the main character's case, he was interested in portraying the scene of the city in the early morning where it looked blue. And he tried to portray it as best he could, but he ran into limitations because he didn't necessarily know all the techniques and yada, yada, yada to like really enhance the piece.
Right.
But he was able to create something, and that felt amazing to him. And I feel like that's such a staple, like that's like step one of the creative process that that a lot of people don't really recognize, is that you have to start at step one, and then you can build up from there. It's not just a magical thing where you just suddenly are painting wonderful cityscapes from day one.
Yeah, totally. Like, I think that's like the thing to me, right? Is that I love Blue Period because it is a story about somebody who got a late start, relatively, right? In art, and has to grapple both with not having the basic sort of tools that everybody else has because they've been doing it for longer, but also measuring yourself up to your peers and what they're doing, and it's and how crushing that can be, and like basically how much art, like making art, can make you feel like you're nothing, like you are a worthless speck of dust. You're hollow inside. There's just nothing for you, right?
But you can't give it up because you just
exactly.
you have that like, intense interest or passion or whatever. You just are hung up on it, and you keep pushing forward.
Right,
with
and
it.
And it shows you that like art is like there is talent in art, right? There is natural talent.
Yeah. There is actual talent. Yeah.
But it is obviously like very much up to a person to nurture that and turn it into something that is usable, right? It's one thing to be born with like really good hand-eye coordination, but it's another thing entirely to be able to draw, right? Yeah, I love Blue Period. I think that the thing about the music, I like the choice of music a lot because it's a lot of these like kind of funky, jazzy piano riffs. It feels very reminiscent of the era of art that is like kind of like the abstract, like Pablo Picasso, right? Like Blue Period is literally named after Picasso's Blue Period, right? So I think it's cool that the music is evocative of that sort of era, and I think it works really well with the show. I wish, honestly, that the anime would take some more risks about how they utilize the visual language.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I think it really could have been something like extremely special in its own right if they had just decided to do something with it, right? And there's kind of glimpses of that, like in the first episode when he's like painting the blue Shibuya skyline for the first time, and he's like going like woo, and he's like flying through the sort of blue space. I thought that was pretty cool. So yeah, we probably will not actually keep watching this, but if you're interested in the story and you aren't really much of a manga person, I would highly recommend watching this. Absolute endorsement from me. But if you're a manga person, absolutely read the manga. The manga is so fucking good. I cannot overstate how good this manga is. It's actually bonkers. Like it has a really like cool, unique, very like grounded feeling art style, and also feels just technically incredible to witness. Anyway, Let's talk about Platinum End, which is so it is this is written by Sugumi Oba and drawn by Takashi Obata. The original manga was. So basically, it's like Death Note but different, because that's basically what this team does, right? They make they either make like a semi autobiography in Bakuman, or they just do like death games, right?
The supernatural death game with like lots of rules and intelligent plot twists and all that.
If you're reading the latest arc of Jujutsu Kaisen, it's basically just that, but the whole thing. It is. This show is so actually buck fucking wild, because like Death Note is pretty like wild, right? Where a genius psychopath serial killer high school student gets his hands on a book that makes him think he's God because he can kill people, right? And then he plays mind games with the police who are trying to catch him, right? But this show is like takes a totally different angle, but is just way more fucking wild with all the shit that's happening. Because it's just like, here is an angel who has come to you because you are attempting suicide, because your life sucks so bad, because your aunt and uncle killed your parents for insurance money, right? Mm-hmm. And then they didn't tell you and you didn't know, so your life just blows, right? And then this angel comes down to you and it's just like, here, I can make your life better by giving you the ability to fly. That's just one. That's just one. Straight up, here's some wings. You can fly now.
Yes, you can fly now.
And then here is a magical bow and arrow, which you can use to make people fall in love with you, or to just love you very intensely. And he's just like, wait, isn't that kind of like fucked up? And she's just like, you could kill your family with this. You could kill your abusive aunt and uncle with this.
By the way, here's the truth about what happened to your parents. And then she just spills it all.
Right. She's just like, oh yeah, by the way, this happens. Doesn't that make you just want to go ape shit? Right? And what's like absolutely wild about this is after this horrifying sequence where he uses it on her aunt to get the truth, or he uses the arrow on his aunt to get the truth, and she's just like, oh, it's true, my husband orchestrated this whole plan. And then he's just like, oh my god, you're scum, you should die. And she just fucking stabs herself and dies, which is horrific, right?
Yes.
But after that, she's just like, oh, by the way, here's another arrow. It just kills people. Like, it's so funny to have just like this, like, yeah, this is basically mind control. And like, we're framing it in the way that you know that it's evil and wrong to mind control people to fall in love with you this deeply. Also, here's an arrow that just kills people. It just kills people.
Yeah.
Like, here's your instant kill button.
This was all like the first episode?
One episode. We watched one episode.
Oh my god, that's okay. So, but at the end of the first episode, not only did all of this happen, right? At the very end, you find out that they're in this death game, but there's also other people that have been granted a similar situation or powers or whatever, because they're all candidates to become God.
To become God, yes. So basically, it's a death game to become God. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't feel like I want to continue watching this, but it's so out there and so wild, and it plays it so straight. Like, I think like this is one of the things that people like don't really understand about Death Note, where Death Note is really good. Like, it's great. Right? It is a classic of the genre. It is a classic anime / manga sort of piece. But I think that people kind of don't get that it's meant to be a little like tongue-in-cheek, right? It's meant to be ridiculous.
Yeah,
right?
yes, definitely.
And I have no idea if Oba and Obata know if it's supposed to be ridiculous, but they like really crank that dial all the way up to the point where it's just actually amazing. It is just a disastrous spectacle waiting to happen in a way that is actually kind of just perfect, right? Like, Death Note is so over dramatized.
Yes, I like that this one doesn't take itself too, like, at least, I mean, from our understanding,
it's hard to say.
It takes itself seriously, but also, does it really though? Because it's so ridiculous.
It takes itself so seriously that I think it like bleeds over into not taking itself seriously. It's kind of taking the piss.
Yeah. that's how I feel about it. But yeah, I think whether you watch the anime or read the manga, they're both good. Obviously, the manga has the benefit of having Obatsu's art, which is even more stellar as time has gone on. Yeah, it's really, really pretty. And the anime doesn't do a bad job. I don't think it is quite as, at least so far, it hasn't been quite as wild as the Death Note anime. But I guess time will tell as far as like how they'll animate the rest of it. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. We probably won't continue watching it, so there's that. But that's just because that's actually just because like this season is fucking packed, actually.
It is pretty packed, yeah.
Speaking of, let's next is 86 second season. I haven't started watching it yet, but I will watch it. So we'll talk about that at the end of the season. Takt Op Destiny, which is boy, how
Okay, so we watched one episode, right?
We watched one episode, and so much happens in one episode.
Yeah.
Okay, so you know, like the plot of Listeners, where like music is dead because of aliens, and so the people who can play music fight the aliens. It's like that, kind of beat for beat, but good, right?
It takes this interesting concept and actually engages with it.
Yes.
As opposed to Listeners, which didn't really.
It also just has an engaging first episode where Listeners really didn't. Like, Listeners kind of just hammers you over the head over and over again with the same shit that's happening. It's like paced so poorly. It feels agonizing to watch. But Takt Op Destiny is, one, ridiculously entertaining. And two, has ridiculously good production value.
Oh gosh,
I keep looking up which studio did this, and I don't remember. It's like Bones or Mappa. Let me just look it up real quick. It's Madhouse and Mappa. That's right. It's a joint production between Madhouse and Mappa. It's it looks incredible. This show looks really good.
Yes. It looks stunning, and I would say the music is pretty good. I'm more of a fan of when they go with their original scores than when they freaking play the freaking Moonlight Sonata for the freaking millionth time.
It was so funny to watch them play Moonlight Sonata.
A dramatic night scene battle. It's like, come the frig on! Pick something else! It's not that I hate Moonlight Sonata, but the way that people use it is so overly cliche, I'd say. But, it was fine, I guess. And but the anime itself, at least based on the first episode, hopefully they maintain a similar quality. I don't expect them to go super crazy like with the first episode, but if they maintain a certain level of quality and pacing like they did with the first episode, then it'll be a really stellar anime.
So yeah, honestly, like the action sequences are just a treat for the eyeballs. It's like candy for the eyeballs. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But one thing I will say about Takt Op Destiny, and obviously we will continue watching it, so I won't talk about this too much, but like I love that they have this like American setting, like this post-apocalyptic American setting, and what they've absorbed about America is there are diners and boxy cars and deserts. That's it. That's America. And I'm like, you know what? Fucking fine. Send it.
That's
Full
fine.
send.
That's fine.
Like, it's like the kind of thing where it would be offensive if this was like if the power dynamics between like the West and Japan were reversed, but because they're not, it's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, I'm down. It's fine.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. All right, let's talk about Mieruko-chan.
Oh, okay. So this is a rather unique blend of ecchi horror, but also like slice of life comedy. And I'm not really sure how I feel about it.
I think I know how I feel about it.
Okay, well, I'll go over the premise and we can talk about our feelings. But essentially, it's about this girl, Mieruko-chan.
The central gag is that she can see ghosts.
Yes.
And she's afraid that if they know that she can see them, they'll kill her or eat her or whatever, do some terrible things. But the sort of gag in the title is that her name is Mieru.
Yes.
Which is like the character for to see, and then ko, which is
Yes.
a sort of suffix you can add to any word to make it a name
Mm-hmm.
for women. For women,
yeah, specifically, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It the reason I'm confused about it is like it takes a lot of time to be an ecchi, right? It very explicitly shows like a teaser upskirt shot, or like the bobs bouncing or whatever, like girls having skinship and stuff like that. And then it like flips on over to the horror where you see something like gross or like a really scary ghost. And it just kind of like plays back and forth between these genres, and I don't know how well they blend together.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like if you take like a little sampling of this, a little sampling of that, and from 3 different plates, but they're all very separate things, and they aren't made into necessarily one dish. For me, at least, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I think to me, it feels more like a just kind of a failure of adaptation. I have a suspicion that the manga is honestly just like better.
Oh, okay.
But because I think horror in anime is very hard to do. Whereas obviously we've talked in the past about like Junji Ito, what makes Junji Ito so good on paper and not so great for adaptation, right? But honestly, like, what really sold the anime to me, not that I want to keep watching it, I think what really carried the anime, I guess I should say, was the delivery of the central voice actress. I think that was honestly the best part.
That's true. She is
the
animation,
animation,
best part,
right? The animation wasn't anything special, but the voice acting was very good. Like,
it was very good. Yes.
Yeah, I don't have a lot else to say about it, honestly.
Yeah, me too.
It probably just isn't my thing in general, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, if you sound kind of intrigued at the blend of ecchi horror and comedy, then I would recommend at least checking out the first episode, because it sounds like it would probably be more of the first episode throughout the rest of the show. I don't know if it would actually build into something. Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about Saihate no Paladin, or the Faraway Paladin, which is an isekai show, but actually it's good. I think
it's actually interesting. Like, it has some interesting characters that you start with in the beginning, whom I don't feel like are super like bland.
Right.
I don't know, tropes. I guess they do have tropes. Don't get me wrong, but they have their own spin on it, which I like. And they all inform the story and their influence on the main character in different ways, and I love that.
Yeah, the thing that to me that I like about the Faraway Paladin is that it actually feels like a story, right? Like there's like real world building going on that isn't just like to support whatever nonsense is going on, right? There is an in-universe reason why it's an isekai, because it is from the perspective of a child who is being raised by 3 different undead. I think that setup is really cool. I think it makes a lot of sense that you would have the isekai protagonist just be like, hey, this is like weird. Why is this happening? What is the world outside like, right? That kind of angle makes it feel more like there's a reason why it's an isekai and not just like a fantasy thing. Not that I think it wouldn't work as just like a fantasy show, but like there are questions, right? And we see it through the main character's eyeballs. And I think honestly it probably as an anime would work even if it wasn't an isekai, but I think it works a lot better as an isekai in the light novels probably. Right? Like I think that just makes a lot of sense, right? I think isekai is like a uniquely light novel suited genre just because like it's mostly first person anyway, so you're getting a lot of the perspective of like that, and it's a lot easier to explain a fantasy world to you if the character also doesn't know, like if the main character also doesn't know the perspective. Right? But yeah, like I like that they decided to put real characters in the show.
Not
like
cardboard cutouts that just kind of move the main character along.
right, like cardboard cutouts with big boo-boos on them. Like that.
Yeah.
That is the greatest sin to me about a lot of isekai, which is that they just refuse to put even the like smallest modicum of effort into characters that are compelling in any way whatsoever. Right?
Yes.
It's like the Sword Art Online problem of it's just like these are all just like cardboard cutouts with boobas.
Please advocate for characters with fleshed out personalities and backgrounds.
But yeah, like I am legitimately intrigued in this show where the premise is literally just here's a child being raised by 3 different undead people who obviously have like a lot of history together. And like that's great. They have relationships with each other, not with the main character, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yes, they do have relationships outside of the main character.
Like there is an entire world outside of the main character.
Yes.
Which feels like vaguely cohesive. And I think that's honestly like the biggest problem with a lot of isekai is that you only get to see like the stuff in front of you. Which means that a lot of times it's made backwards, right? Where it's made so that only the stuff that you're seeing gets made up on the spot or whatever, right?
Yeah, like the world is basically made up for the main character. And there are stories that, of course, like kind of work in that direction in a way that's successful, but for the most part, if it's done not up to par, then you see through the seams, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see where this goes. Because I am very intrigued in Paladins in general, like conceptually, but like just like where they decide to go with it. If there's anything we can kind of like pull from it thematically, because it, you know, obviously the 3 mentor characters are already dead. They are undead creatures. So.
Yeah, I would say the first episode has been an interesting introduction to all 3 of the characters, the 3 undead characters plus the main character, and so I'm interested in where they'll, I guess, push the story from here.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Let's talk about Banished from the Hero's Party. I decided to live a quiet life in the countryside. Let's say that 5 times fast.
Wow.
No,
I'm good.
This is one of the most prominent pieces in a growing subgenre of fantasy that is.
Is it?
So it's RPG fantasy, but not isekai fantasy, right? Because there a lot of isekai like all isekai fantasy is RPG fantasy, more or less.
Okay.
With exceptions for stuff that we can sort of reverse classify as isekai, right?
Sure.
But all of the stuff that is operating in the kind of like web novel space is basically RPG fantasy, because that's what's big and popular.
Right.
But RPG fantasy is actually like a bigger category than isekai is.
Right.
Because there's shows like this where it's not an isekai. There's also shows like Is It Wrong to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon, right? That's like kind of the same, where it's not actually an isekai, even though it's kind of structured sort of like one.
Right.
But yeah, this is about being banished from the hero's party, either because you are usually it's either like you're underestimated or you're legitimately not being like that useful or whatever. But it's essentially, it's funny because it kind of fits in a very similar way to Rising of the Shield Hero, the premise of Rising of the Shield Hero, but it's much less malicious, it feels like, a lot of the time. You still kind of get that vindictiveness, like that petty revenge sort of like, oh, the party was so much better when I was in it, right? In this subgenre. But also, I think, to be fair, you also have a lot of stuff outside of that, and it doesn't feel as malicious as that. It doesn't feel as like vengeance porn-y.
Yeah, I think at least with this first episode that we watched, he definitely has some like feelings to sort out with the hero's party or whatever, like lingering feelings. But I think it almost feels like he kind of thinks that it's better off without him.
Yeah. And like that's like the structure of the show is set up like that because he is essentially like a tutorial character that like doesn't really get any stronger, right? So like if you've ever played a a Fire Emblem game, there's an archetype called I think they're called Jagan archetypes, but it's basically a pre-promoted unit you get, like a paladin character, right? But they have really bad growths. So if you put too many resources into them, you get a bad endgame unit. But they're basically there to guide the rest of the party up to snuff, right? So it's like in when you're playing Awakening, right? You use Frederick to like weaken everybody.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking of Frederick, yeah.
That's the exact archetype. Except Frederick falls into a slightly different archetype, which is like a pre-promoted unit, but actually has decent to good growth, so you can still use it in the end game. Those are more popular nowadays than like the straight Jagan archetypes. But like, sorry, not to get too into it, but like, so yeah, he is a tutorial character basically. Like he starts at level like I don't know if they ever explained this, but he basically starts like with like 30 levels. So he's like big beefy boy, but
right, he's super overpowered in the beginning.
Right, exactly. But as the rest of the party grows and matures, they have much better end game potential than he does.
Right.
And that's kind of I will say we probably won't watch any more of this. We probably just won't have time. But like I like that structure of a story because it takes RPG fantasy and kind of like does something interesting with the RPG fantasy element of it. It's just like, this is just how the world is structured, right? It's like people have levels and powers, right?
Yeah.
And it actually does something with that premise, which I think is cool. But at the end of the day, it's a slow life, quote unquote.
It's a slow life fantasy, not an isekai, a fantasy.
well, yeah, but like basically, it is basically a what's it called? A slice of life in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of isekai try to go this slow life route, but this is one that actually is just he's actually from this world.
But yeah, so there's Banished and the Heroes Party. I decided to live a quiet life in the countryside. If that interests you at all, I would highly recommend checking it out. Let's talk about My Senpai is Annoying, which we probably will watch more of, I think. It's cute. There's like one very specific trope that I like kind of take issue with, which is like Japan loves this character archetype of like a tiny girl, like somebody who's probably like 4 or 5 or whatever, right? Like the size of an actual child. And they're like working adults who are like 24 to 25. But they're like, I want to be seen as an adult, but they like child meals and like childlike things, and it's like, I mean, like, you couldn't have just like chosen one or the other, like have a child or just have an actual adult with adult tastes. Like I'm also
over it. Not a fan of this trope, I guess. And they tend to be like the tsundere type of personality too. It's just a lot, and yeah, definitely she's someone who at the very least she's not super, I guess, old. She just recently graduated school, and this is like her first serious
she's like
job,
just entering the workforce.
Yeah, I'm at least forgiving in that regard because she is in a transitory part of her life where she is trying to be an adult, like a full working adult. And
totally. Yeah, like that does make sense in that regard of like trying to be more like an adult than you are to sort of compensate for the fact that you don't really feel like you belong as an adult.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, this is a romance-ish story.
Yeah. Yes.
It's honestly pretty cute. It's basically just like a cute office romance. And the male lead is a big boy who laughs very loudly, and I would die for him.
The male lead is the best character in this show.
He's so good
so far, at least. But he's
straight
like,
up.
Actually.
But we actually haven't watched enough to get to the grandpa, which I think will be your favorite character, Renu.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, that's.
I think you'll love grandpa.
That's why I put the tentative like so far. You know, there can always be more characters who are great.
Yeah. This is a well produced show. It
definitely
takes the art style and translates it pretty much perfectly. I would say. Yeah, I have no complaints whatsoever in that regard. It looks good.
Cool.
Okay, let's talk about Irina, the vampire cosmonaut, which is fucking wild because it's basically like you have an alternate universe space race between the West and the USSR, but it focuses on the USSR and they're like, okay, we have to send a person to space.
Mhm.
But that's dangerous. So what we're going to do is send a vampire to space. And it's like, all right, hold up.
We have
Why?
to break this down. First of all, you've acknowledged the fact that you know that this person is a vampire. And you're fine with that. And second of all, you just want to send them to space?
Communist vampire goes to space.
Uh-huh.
If that premise sounds fucking wild, I promise you that I mean, it's honestly like much chiller than its premise would sort of lead you to believe. It feels more like a honestly, it feels kind of like a little understated, right? Like it feels more like a slow character drama than like anything else, even though the premise is so fucking wild. We're gonna send vampires to the moon. Why? Why would you do that? Anyway, the director I hear has some eccentricities, and you can very much tell because there's a scene where she eats like salmon roe on bread, and it's just a very involved sequence that you watch, where she like takes like one egg and like gingerly squishes it between her vampire teeth, and it's just like, why am I watching this? This feels wrong. Feels like I should be going to jail.
The director said, I have an animation budget I can use.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if he just like did it by hand. He was like, give it to me.
I'll do it myself.
I'll do it. I don't really know how I feel about it otherwise. It might be someone else's cup of tea. It might honestly have been my cup of tea, but I don't know. I don't think I have time for it in my life. I just took one look and went, all right then.
You don't have time for salmon roe?
Yeah. So let's talk about Sakugan briefly, because I mean, we're watching this
because we're continuing.
This is what we've watched the most of. Basically, it's like Gurren Lagann meets Made in Abyss. A father-daughter team goes and tries to make it to the surface, but everyone lives in the mole land, right? So that's really cool. Oh my god, this premise is so cool. They live in these like underground settlements that each have kind of like a culture attached to them. So like the main characters are from Pinyin, which is like this like China sort of. It doesn't even feel like a Chinese inspired thing. It feels like a Chinatown inspired.
It does feel like a Chinatown, yeah.
Yeah, like the architecture doesn't look like China. It looks like Chinatown. But then they go to like a place that's basically like Rome, and they have all the sort of Italian stuff, and like it's cool. I mean, the world building is cool. Like everyone lives underground, and there's like all these like weird big caverns. And it's very Made in Abyssy because you're just exploring all these like cool locales, and there's clearly just I don't know. I love the premise of this being essentially a father-daughter road trip.
Yeah.
But yeah, the animation is really top tier here. They have a lot of fun with it. It's super vibrant and energetic and dynamic and full of life. And they even have like these like really kind of emotionally intense scenes where they put a lot of work into the facial expressions of the characters and how they kind of look, and they like scrunch up their faces really, really detailed, and it really like works to sell the impact, honestly, I would say.
Yeah.
So highly recommend Sakugan if you're in for a good time at all. Like cool world, cool robots, cool father-daughter family road trip. Like it's got everything you need.
It's a pretty light watch. I mean, the first episode is a bit heavy because of certain events, but then I guess it's more of like a action, no, more like an adventure comedy.
It feels, it feels like, honestly, it feels like a road trip, but like in a fantasy world.
Yeah.
Which is cool. All right, let's talk about the Heike Story, which is it's done by Studio Saru, which is Masaaki Yuasa's studio, and I will watch anything that Masaaki Yuasa ever puts out. This show slaps.
Yeah.
So if you don't know what the Heike story is, it is essentially one of the sort of like great stories of Japan, like one of the most well-known stories historically. It is a story about the Heike clan and their like rise and fall, but it's primarily told through the sort of like wandering minstrels that are biwa players, which is like a stringed instrument in Japan. And that's something that is very immediately prominently recognizable to anybody who like has that sort of context. It's very famous. And I think they're being like I think they must have been contracted by the NHK or something to do it. But it's basically like a period piece, but with Masaaki Yuasa kind of slapped in there. So like you have these like anachronistic music choices where like rock music is playing while like something happens in like, you know, the like ancient Japan.
Yeah,
this show bangs.
It seems like a really, really cool story so far. The fact that he's taking it something that's like a Japanese epic, I guess. And then,
pretty much.
Putting his own spin on it. So I'm down.
So we'll touch on that at the end of the season. Let's talk about The Vampire Dies in No Time, which is a gag comedy that apparently started being serialized in manga form in 2015, which feels honestly way too recent for just how old school this comedy feels.
It feels very old school.
This is like boomer comedy. Like it feels it's not to say it isn't funny. It is. It's entertaining, but it feels like I'm like 12 again and watching like, you know, like Bokeh Tsukomi comedy. From that era. Yeah,
I would tend to agree.
But it's basically just old school like slapstick, like bo type stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if you like that kind
a little more
era
grounded
of stuff, then this would be right up your alley. It's just
totally a great
it's brought into like it's being animated now.
Which is honestly it looks pretty good too.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about Ousama Ranking, which is absolutely our hit of the season to me.
It was such a surprise. It just kind of like we started and it was like, okay, but then it became like more and more interesting very quickly.
Yeah, okay. So it like opens with the sort of premise, which is that the main character is a child who is meant to be a king. Who is like the son, one of the sons of like the great king of this kingdom.
Yes.
Who's like the greatest fighter who has ever lived.
Yeah.
But this child is he's deaf, so he can't talk, and he can't hear. So and it's being produced in a collaboration with the like Japanese like sign language association. So all of the sign language that they do is accurate, which is honestly really cool. But like
that is very cool.
This show really creeps up on you because it starts with something that is very kind of silly and it feels like so low stakes. It feels like you're watching a show made for children.
Oh, definitely,
It has that storybook-esque sort of aesthetic.
Yes.
And like a kind of a premise, and like it feels almost like, you know, like, oh, I'm an adult. Why would I be interested in this? But then it slowly sort of like pulls you in to this like really gripping like character drama where like obviously like all of the sort of adults in Boji's life, the main character's name is Boji, look down on him because he's deaf, right? And the second prince is like really great at sword fighting, and he's like basically supposed to be he's like the front runner to become the next king, right? Everybody thinks that. And then at the end of the episode, there's like this duel between them, and they really cranked the animation up to like 25.
Yes.
It looks amazing.
It's so epic.
Straight up. I was so surprised because it was like, okay, cool. Like it looks good. Like it's been executed very well for what it is.
Right.
And then they're just like, oh, by the way, here's like a sick animation of the main boy character just like dodging sword stroke after sword stroke, and you're like, wait, what the hell is going on here? This is so cool.
What kind of show did this become?
Yeah. So, if you are like not super engaged in it in the first couple minutes, maybe even the first half of the episode, like that's totally okay. I would highly recommend you just keep watching it because it will, in my opinion, it will just pull you in.
Definitely watch until the end of the episode.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, I was not expecting to like this show as much, but honestly, it might be one of my favorites of the season. Like,
I want to
straight
definitely
up so
watch
good.
more. Yes.
And it looks so unique too because of the storybook aesthetic. It is like this land where it's like, I love it because it's just this like setting where the king is inexplicably large. He's like the size of a giant and nobody questions it. Everybody else is normal sized, but he's just big. But it feels like it works because like it's a fantasy, right? It's like this fantasy kingdom, this storybook fantasy kingdom, like Jack and the Beanstalk sort of feeling. It's great. Ousama Ranking is absolutely great. I cannot wait to watch more of it. Let's talk about Demon Slayer Mugen Train for TV, which is Demon Slayer. It's beautiful. I think the first episode is a little slow if you've already seen the movie.
The first episode is made up.
Yes, yeah. Like, okay, so the first episode basically doesn't, all of the contents of the first episode do not exist in the original story and the original manga. But to be fair, there's a lot of stuff that, like, you know, Ufotable kind of takes liberties with and is willing to, like, you know, put their own spin on and produce stuff. I think, to me, the first episode, it's hard for me to watch the first episode because I've already just seen the movie.
Me too. Yeah.
And I'd be curious to see what somebody who's never seen the movie feels about it because I feel like it might honestly be okay if you've never seen the movie.
Yeah, so that's my opinion of this too, is that if you've already watched the movie and you loved it, and you didn't feel like it was particularly lacking in any way in terms of content, or you didn't feel like the pacing was too fast and all of that, then I would say that watching this kind of feels like they took the movie and they stretched and padded it out like crazy. And that's essentially how I feel about this anime adaptation, even though it is gorgeous. It just feels like they stretched out the movie, because I really like the pacing of the movie. I don't feel like I was missing anything in particular. But if you haven't experienced the movie and you like watching, you know, anime and you like watching episodic releases, I would say that this is probably going to be a really good watch for you. If you like Demon Slayer, of course. Because that's how it's paced out, is that they made it into serialized anime pacing versus the tight-knit pacing of a movie.
It is still Demon Slayer. It is still Demon Slayer made by Ufotable. It is going to be good. I think it's sort of one of those one or the other situations. Because I think if you watch both, you're gonna feel a little bit offset. Because I think the pacing of the movie was good.
Yeah, I think so too.
But I can see how being in a movie format might feel very limiting. Honestly, it's kind of surprising to me that they were allowed to just make the movie but a show.
That's what I was thinking. Like, when they first announced that, you know, the next season or whatever, I had assumed that they would just continue with the story after the movie. But no, they got permission to basically make the movie into a season. So I would say, for me, as having watched and enjoyed the movie, I would need a lot more time, like to separate between having watched the movie and watching this anime season. For me, this is like, I'm not interested in watching this like at all. But if you were to say, like, you know, like a year or two down the line, would I watch it? Sure, why not? Because then enough time would have passed that I can separate the two more easily.
The movie was really good, though.
The movie was really good.
Like, honestly, 90% of the problems that I have watching the first episode of this is just how much the movie was present in my brain. Like, I think you're right. I think if you gave it time, I would enjoy this just as much.
Right. Yeah. I'd say a moviegoer needs more time. But if you haven't watched the movie, you probably will enjoy this.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me about Sankaku Mado no Sotogawa wa Yoru, because please. No, please. No context. Just tell me.
Okay. So my context for starting to watch this was someone commented "gay exorcists," and I was like, "What do you mean? What do you mean?" So
oh my god!
Well, I'll watch like the first episode because I'm eating dinner. I don't really have anything to do, anything to watch, and so the first episode is there is just so much of the homosexuality, and I didn't really. I was laughing because it was so over the top ridiculous. But basically, there's this guy who works at a bookstore, and he runs into this dude who like has exorcism powers, and this exorcist really fixates on bookstore guy. Bookstore guy's name is Mikado.
Okay.
For some reason, he basically comes up right up to the guy and says like, "You're my destiny," and. And Mikado, since he was very young, could basically see or sense ghosts and spirits in his vicinity, right? And they always freaked him out. And so as an adult, he's like a very cowardly dude because he sees all these scary things, but he doesn't know what to do about it. Here comes along Exorcist guy. He knows exactly what to do about it because it's his, it's how he gets by with his living, but he fixates on Mikado because basically if they were to bond together, it would enhance the exorcist's powers enough to basically dispel the spirits more easily. But the thing is that when they bond together,
oh no,
like their psychic connection, they very explicitly say that it is an erotic connection.
Oh
so
my
Mikado
god!
is having like erotic feelings while they're like psychically connected. It's
what?
So funny.
Oh my god!
And so I would say after the first episode, they toned the gay down like a ton.
Okay,
right?
all right.
They take a huge back step. It's still there, right? But it's not as big a part of the show. Episode 1 is definitely they put it all in there. So, it actually, I would say like I've been keeping up with it, so I'm like around episode 6 or 7 or something like that.
Is it a full-length show?
I don't know, actually. That's a good question.
Is it like a 24 episode or a 24-minute episode, or is it like a 5-minute
Yeah, it's a 24-minute episode.
Okay,
but I don't know how many episodes there are in this season. 12. Okay. It's a 12-episode season. So, I would say that since I'm at roughly the halfway point, it's actually starting to get interesting at the halfway point.
Okay, all right.
Before that, it was like kind of like setup, right? So you start to learn that Exorcist guy is really like a possessive, jealous dude over Mikado, and all of the other characters in the show are like, "Yo, Mikado, you got to get away from this guy. He's kind of bad news." But Mikado's stupid, and he keeps going around with this guy, and the other characters basically tell him, "You need to get away from this guy because he's essentially attached the psychic equivalent of a dog leash to you. Like you are his pet, you are his possession, and that's how he treats you." But Mikado just keeps like, he's like, "I want to know more about this guy,
okay.
I don't want to save him."
All right. That's how you know it's a yaoi.
Right. So that's like the first half, I'd say, of the show is that learning about that dynamic, and also learning about that there's something going around where people are being cursed and they're ending up dead, and there's someone, there's like a witch going around who is apparently responsible for these curses, but then you find out that she's a high school girl who has her own problems. And then I would say the latest episodes were interesting because you learn about Mikado's mom, and she is implied to have the power to, unbeknownst to her, to dispel or ward off curses and ghosts.
Okay.
But the problem is that it only extends to herself and maybe one other person, right? And so she ends up, they go into like a story about her past where she meets Mikado's dad. He is apparently implied to be a person who attracts these kinds of things. But then when they have Mikado, she doesn't have enough power to basically ward off these things for both of them. And so the dad decides that he's going to leave so that she can protect their son and he doesn't cause trouble for them. And then it implies at the very end of the episode that he's like the big bad antagonist of the whole show. He's the one that's causing all these curses that's happening around the city and doing a lot of bad stuff. And then in the next episode after that, they get into the exorcist's backstory and why he's kind of messed up and possessive. And it turns out that he is he was at the heart of a cult. And so his mom basically built this cult following around her son because he had exorcist powers. He could basically make people, quote unquote, feel better by expelling their whatever's going on with them. And as a result, because she built up this whole religion around him, he was regarded as they needed to keep him pure. And so they would basically abstain him from eating meat, interacting with outside world. They kept him in what looks like a padded insane asylum room for like his entire childhood. And they would talk a lot about the importance of destiny and stuff like that. And so that's why he's obsessed with destiny. And he ends up afterward being really attached to this cop who helps save him from this cult, essentially, but who's also like an absolute skeptic. He doesn't believe in any of this cursed supernatural nonsense. But that's why the Exorcist likes this guy, is because he was at the heart of a cult where everyone believed so strongly in his powers that it was crazy and it made his life miserable. And so that's where I'm at with this show. I don't know where it's gonna go. I think they'll probably make the relationship between Mikado and this exorcist so freaking toxic that it'll make me crazy.
Oh no. Oh god.
And I don't know like how gay it will become. I was
gonna say, do you fancy a return to the 90s yaoi scene?
And that's kind of how it feels, right? Like even the ending has like all these shots of them being like close to each other, you know, in that way of like the 90s shonen ai yaoi stuff, but like I don't know if it'll actually be a yaoi or anything like that, or if it's just like the aesthetic.
Jesus,
but, yeah, it's based on a manga, and I kind of have that same feeling as like you had with the ecchi horror comedy show, which is that I think I get this feeling that the manga is probably a better format to experience the series in than the anime. But I haven't, actually read it, so I don't know. But it is serialized in a yaoi manga magazine.
Of course, obviously.
So I guess one would presume that maybe there is actual men falling in love or like having relations.
I mean, surely, yeah. there's probably some sex going on.
But yeah, if you want like. If you want to laugh at that era of yaoi, I would say watch the first episode and then you can decide whether you want to watch it. But it does take a step back as to everything after the first episode. So.
Jesus Christ.
It's so funny.
All right. Well, all right then, cool. That did actually just remind me that there is one more show that I watched, which was I watched one episode of Ganbare Douki-chan, which is a 5-minute short form about a office lady and the bland ass man that she's in love with, and all of the other sexy ladies that want to bone him. This is basically just an excuse to have like cute office ladies in ecchi poses, and like straight up, like that's just what it is. It is based on a series of drawings / sort of a web manga by an artist who I don't remember the name of right now off the top of my head. I'll link them in the description, but yeah, it's honestly like a long running sort of like short web manga sort of thing that people I guess got attached to enough that it was eventually made into like a short form anime. And the anime is basically just the manga, which is basically just drawings of sexy office ladies. Like it really, that's all it is, right? It is 100% an unabashed excuse to draw sexy office lady anime characters in ecchi poses. And like, if that's your cup of tea, absolutely. If you are looking for any other kind of substance other than like, sort of very mild and bland romance triangle stuff, then you're not gonna find anything really. There you go. There's my quick review of Ganbare Douki-chan. Why don't we wrap up?
Sure.
Okay. Who are you and where can we find you on the internet, I think?
Hi, I'm Renu, also known as Swan. You can find me on Instagram at swan.drawn. You can find me on Twitch and Twitter and Tumblr and Facebook, all that, at swandrawn. I stream basically every Friday evening. I'm currently playing through Resident Evil 1 Remake. It was part of like
nice.
a Halloween type deal, but I didn't finish the game by Halloween, so we're just gonna keep going until I finish it. It
very
is
nice.
Very, very good. I'm really enjoying myself. My time with the game. Yeah.
All right, cool.
What about you?
You can find me all the places at Literal Soup. You know what I do. I do stuff and things. I have been trying to find a new streaming schedule that works with my current being a human being that works a job schedule, but
yes.
That's always difficult. So I think I might start streaming on Wednesday mornings now.
Oh,
which is interesting.
That is interesting.
But yeah, I'm trying to find a more regular sort of schedule. I think like probably Monday night, except not this Monday night for specific reasons. Anyway, doesn't matter. You can find me all places at Literal Soup. I will be streaming video games and tweeting undoubtedly. So there you go. Okay, all right. Well, why don't we wrap up? Our opening is by Scott 2 Network, and our ending is by Takuma Okada. And the patrons we are thanking this week are Evan Williams, backed by Mirror Test, Claire, Frostfalls, Shondao, Cherabelle, Undead Uncanny, and Dylan Boats. Thank you so much for your support.
Thank you.
Always. All right. I think on that note, we will see you next time.
See you next time.
さようなら。また明日ね。